All right, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce our speakers. Lauren Johnson is the User Experience Librarian at Nevada State College since 2019. Her work focuses on assessments of library resources and services so the library can make evidence-based changes to better serve NSC's growing community. She holds a BA in English and Theater from Presbyterian College and an MFA in Creative Writing and MS in Information Science from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And Nanci is a library specialist. She creates and maintains exemplary customer service at the service desk. She is also responsible for supervising student workers and managing the technology and device lending in the library. Nanci holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration with a concentration in management from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. All right. Yeah. Okay, and I think we went over the Q&A already, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you take over.
All right, awesome. Just give me a hot second to get this fired up.
Sure.
It's campus internet, you guys. There it goes. All right.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. Thank you for that lovely introduction. So as they mentioned, we will be talking about refreshing library spaces, using assessment to implement meaningful changes. And so the introductions, thank you for the introduction. So I oversee the space, service desk, and technology lending. Like they mentioned, I have a bachelor's in business management from UNLV, and I am actually currently getting my MLIS at SJSU.
And I'm Lauren. That was actually a really awesome introduction.
Yeah.
You do it better than we're going to do it ourselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm the user experience librarian, and a lot of my work focuses on designing and conducting user research and library assessments. I also manage assessment for the library, in addition to being the business and humanities liaison librarian. I am also a proud cat mom.
Gets me every time.
It does. That's Silas. He's adorable. It's Friday, and I figured we would all need a photo of a cat. I also just honestly try to work him into every single presentation I do. So that's him. He's cute. And we're moving on to talk about Nevada State College. Just to give you guys a little bit of background or information on the school, for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, Nevada State College is located in Henderson, Nevada, which is right outside of Las Vegas. We're like super close. We can even see the strip from the library. And a couple of facts and figures about the college. We are a small school, so we have just under 4,000 FTE. Our actual enrollment is a little over 7,000 students. 48% of those students are first generation, and we are a Hispanic serving institution and an Asian American, Native American, and Pacific Islander serving institution. So we have a very diverse student body that we're very proud of. And we're also a young school. We were founded in 2002, which means that we just celebrated our 20th anniversary back in August, which was really exciting. Mm-hmm. And this is our lovely library team. We're dressed up as superheroes for an event that took place last fall. It was part of our no-cost textbook initiative, and we styled ourselves as the Textbook Justice League. So that was really exciting, just helping students to find textbooks, for little or no cost, and promoting our own initiative and work in that area. But as far as library team goes, we're also a small team. Small team for a small school. We have about 6 librarians, or we actually have 6 librarians, it's not about 6 librarians, including our dean, as well as 2 library specialists currently. A little bit more about the Marydean Martin Library that you might find interesting is that we are a digital library. We do have a small annex on campus where we have a small physical collection, but we are predominantly a digital library. And we are also the first digital library in the state of Nevada, which is pretty cool. We are also, in 2020, we're the recipient of the ACRL Excellence in College Libraries Award, which we were very proud of. Mm-hmm. All right, so a little bit about this session. What are we going to talk about? Well, we've done our introduction, so good on us. I'm going to talk a little bit about the origin of the project, why it is we came to do this space assessment in the first place. Then Nancy's going to take it away, talking about our methods. We're both going to kind of discuss our findings from the study. And then we're going to talk about some lessons learned. So if you want to replicate this at your own institution, you do not make the same mistakes we did.
They weren't bad. You could always do better, but
yeah,
for sure.
Nothing egregious, but there were definitely some things that we would not repeat.
Yeah, just to make your life easier.
or that we would do differently, having done it once already.
Yeah.
All right. So the origins of the project. Background. All right. So this project and assessment came about as part of like a larger assessment initiative taking place at the library. We do track assessments that contribute towards, our accreditation and things that when the accreditors visit that we really want to highlight in terms of, like how we are assessing ourselves and the changes and improvements we're making, in response to those assessments. So one of those assessments that we did for accreditation, with that sort of mindset was the Ithaca surveys. We did both the faculty and the undergraduate surveys in fall 2021. And there was a fairly, sizable portion of that survey, the undergraduate survey, that focused on library space, in particular on satisfaction on whether that space was meeting students' expectations or needs. And while overall the library scored, very well, students in general were very satisfied with the library, there were still places that we identified for improvement in those areas where on the satisfaction, scores, we just scored, a little bit lower comparatively to other space elements in the survey. And the two that really stood out to us were noise levels that students, felt like could be improved, in addition to space in terms of students feeling like they had space to spread out their belongings, kind of, have their own little area to work or kind of be. And so those were two things that we knew that we wanted to try to improve in the space. And so in order to do that, we decided to do this space assessment to get an idea of not only how students were using the space, but also, ways in which they were compensating in the space for things that, they didn't have or wasn't provided by the space. So it was kind of like the main goal of our study. We also had some anecdotal evidence in our Gimlet logs. So Gimlet is a software that we use to track interactions at our front desk. This includes questions that get asked, as well as complaints or compliments. We also have a positive in.
Want to make sure we keep it.
We want to have both. It's a balance, but we took a look at those logs, not coding them at the beginning, at least we eventually did so, but just kind of skimming them over to see like what was there. And far and away, like the most common complaint was about noise. Part of that is the fact that the library shares a floor of the building that it's on, and we don't technically have like a front door where we could seal off. So a lot of noise from like the downstairs, the lobby area, the cafe kind of comes up. But there's also, things that are more so in our control within the space as well as students. We also took a look at common questions that got asked, which added an element of kind of like looking at, wayfinding a bit in the study, simply because like one of the questions that stood out to us that got asked, not super frequently, but enough to make us like pay attention to it, was students coming to the library to ask where the library was. They didn't realize that they were in the library. And it was equally comedic because in Gimlet, not only do you record, the question asked, but also the response given to the question. And it was really funny to have, whoever was at the front desk, typing the response was like, "You're here, you made it." Or like, "This is the library, welcome." So
benefits of being a digital library.
Yes, is that you don't have the stacks to cue to people that they are, in fact,
in the library.
So that was something that we wanted to take a look at too in the space study, taking special notes of, as we were observing people in the space, like, were they coming in and kind of looking around and looking confused, or, did it seem like they kind of knew where they were going? So out of all of this background, the Space Makeover project was born. It was a project that we did last year. It was a 2022 project for us. And as far as the project structure goes, there were 3 members on that team. One was myself. A lot of the work that I did, concentrated on, developing and then conducting the study and then assessing the data. Nanci, as our project manager, did all of that and more. She's our fearless leader. And then we also had our outreach and engagement librarian, and Elena Manjuk, working on the project with us as well. All right, so these are some consulted sources we used. We used more than two when we were developing these projects, but these are the two sources we kind of returned to over and over again, and the ones that I think we would agree were the most impactful to the development of the study itself. The first was a presentation given at ALA last year that Nanci saw, called Ethnographic Design, Creating Culturally Centered Library Spaces. I believe there's also a few articles written by these presenters on this same project that they were working on as well, which can be found. The second was actually a paper I was a co-author on in graduate school about a study done at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville libraries on their active learning space. And from that, we kind of pulled sort of ideas of how we wanted to construct our data collection maps and whatnot, and how we wanted to actually go about recording students' use of the space. It was kind of like ideas came out of that paper. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Nanci, and she's going to start talking about our methods.
Hi. Okay, so our methods. Just an outline of what we'll be going over, because it's kind of a lot. The time frame that we were looking at, the maps themselves, and the data that we gathered using Gimlet and like Google Sheets to analyze the heat maps. Okay, so the time frame that we were looking for was just a standard week, something that didn't have anything going on like finals, midterms, anything of that sort. We didn't have any events really that week, and so that ended up being in November. We wanted to make sure that it covered all the hours that we were open. And so we're open 6 days of the week. The only days that we're closed on Sundays, and our hours are on the right-hand side. So we're open Monday through Thursday, 7:30 a.m. to 9 p.m., Friday, 7:30 to 5, and then Saturday, 9 to 5. And so we definitely wanted to make sure that we covered all those hours. So it would have to be more than us that participated in it. So we actually ended up with a total of 7 people involved, including part-time librarians that worked in the evenings past 5 p.m. and student workers to fill in when we had nobody else. And so we would go out into the space every 30 minutes to just check on the space, mark where everybody was sitting, and then we would switch off every 3 to 4 hours because it would be kind of time consuming to do anything else, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. And to explain further what we actually did, I'm going to go on to our map. So just to give you some background, we are only one floor, like Lauren mentioned, in a building. And so we're actually kind of a tiny library. We have a shared space that includes the Academic Success Center, as well as Trio and IT. And so us looking through the space only took around 5 to 10 minutes to mark everybody down. And so we originally had an outdated floor plan. And I was able to have one of my student workers who is in visual media design, basically like go through and fill in the areas that we were missing or changed over the years using IBS Paint X and Procreate. And so that was really nice. She said that you could also do it in Photoshop. That's just the things that she preferred to use on her iPad. And so we were able to get an up-to-date map so we can actually mark everything accurately. And here's the design of this worksheet that we ended up printing out. So essentially what we did was we would just print out a bunch of copies of this, enough that we knew we would cover all the hours and all the times that we would do. And we would go out into the space, and with erasable pens, definitely recommend those, just go through and mark everything, every activity that people were doing, and different colors represented different things. So you could see the key at the bottom. It says red is a person that's seated in the space. Blue is a person who's in action. They're like getting something from the service desk, or they're printing something out. And so green is probably the most significant. It's the one that means that they were kind of doing stuff in the space that it wasn't necessarily intended for. So for example, like people would sleep in the space, or like they would take up an extra seat next to them because there wasn't enough room. And so these were the ones that spoke the most to us. And some other things to note is we had two circles. And so one circle that was filled indicated that the person was there. And then a circle that was not filled meant that the person was not there, but their belongings were. And so, you know, a lot of the times libraries, people like to run to the restroom and leave their stuff because they feel it's a safe space. But we definitely don't recommend that, leaving their stuff in there just because, you know, liability issues. So yeah. Using the map. So this is the map in action. This is an example of one that we did. So as you can see, the blue, we marked it as making study room reservations. They were at the service desk doing that. And then the green was just like a lot of people taking up extra seats or extra table space that was next to them. And so that was significant. And as you can see, one of the circles is left unfilled. So that just meant that the person left their stuff there. And then the rest of the people were just kind of sitting throughout the library space. The next thing that we did was we went into Qualtrics and actually inputted the data. And so we would basically hello? Okay, I'm going to continue. We would basically have to take we would take everything that we put on the paper onto Qualtrics. And so we would just go through and click through each dot that we did. I would say the most difficult thing about this was just having to zoom in and make sure you got the exact spot that you did on the paper. And so we would actually have to do it 10 at a time, 10 entries at a time, just because it could only handle that much. And so we'd have to take a survey each time. And this is what came out of it. And so here's the actual final heat map, which we'll talk about a little bit more in detail later. But this is what it looks like when you're inputting the data. And so the green means that it's not used as much, like the lighter tones. And then when it's like red, that means it's a hotspot. So if you're interested in creating your own heat map in Qualtrics, you can start by doing a survey in Qualtrics, switch the question type to heat map, and upload the floor plan. And then just make sure you allow multiple submissions, because this is the type of thing you will be inputting lots and lots of times. Okay, so some pros to using heat maps in Qualtrics is that it's simple to use. You know, after you create the survey, you just go in there, click on the dots, and then move on. And it was provided by our institution, so it was readily available for us. We were able to just start practicing with it right away as soon as we figured out that it had this function. Some limitations, like I mentioned earlier, is you can only do 10 entries at a time. On the right-hand side, I show you the interaction clicks, and the maximum is 10. And, you know, like I mentioned, we do have a smaller space. So it was very simple for us to go out there and just click on everything. So it might be a little bit more difficult for larger spaces to do it. But if you have more people, I think it's possible. So data gathering, like I mentioned before, we are doing Gimlet and Google Sheets. So Gimlet is a service desk statistics platform, like Lauren mentioned. So it talks about transactions, comments. We even put things in there that like we overhear from students while they're passing by, like, this isn't a library, it doesn't have books. That's like their favorite one to put in there.
Or I really like the plants. This is really nice.
Oh yeah, they really like talking about the plants. Yeah, they really love the plants. And so we just want to make sure that we document that as best as we can. So for this specific study, we pulled the support and complaints. Supports is kind of a catch-all for us. And so we figured a lot of stuff would be in there. And while we were doing that, we discovered some wayfinding issues as well. And so we included that in it. But we were mainly looking for noise and furniture related questions. So we actually coded this data, actually Lauren did, from spring 2021 to fall 2022. And this is what the Gimlet platform looks like for us. And so we have the types on the left-hand side, and what we did is narrow it down by complaints and support. But as you can see, we have more categories than that. And then we have like undergrads, faculty and staff and so forth. We have a very limited graduate student population, so a majority of what we have in Gimlet is from undergrads. Okay. And so the count of heat maps, I did a bunch of different ones, but mainly what I wanted to see was patterns that we had in the heat maps themselves. So this actually helped me to see the busiest days and times, which I'll talk about a little bit more in findings. And I was able to evaluate the comments in there as well. And I specifically was looking for high chairs count. So I did one of those as well, just to see how impactful it was to have those chairs and how many people use them for extra space. So I went through each day individually. I did Monday through Saturday. And so I have a total count of each day. And then I also did a total count of everything. So that way we know how many people we had that in that day. I mean, in that whole week and stuff like that. I just made sure I triple checked everything, because it definitely you can definitely make errors when going through, like 70 heat maps. And so I just made sure that I kept that in order as best as I could. And yeah. So here are our findings, and I'm going to let Lauren talk about the heat map.
Yeah, so you've seen this heat map before. We gave a little sneak preview. So this was our final heat map. We called it our master heat map, and this was done in a single survey in Qualtrics that only had the one question, which was the heat map question. And we just repeatedly would take that survey over and over and over again, entering every single one of those map sheets into the Qualtrics survey. And then at the end, once all that data was entered, it generated this heat map, which showed us, like where the hotspots were, where were the areas of most activity in the library over the course of all open hours over a week. And so as you can see, there's one very significant hotspot here, right above the ASC. This desk area is where all of our desktop computers are in the library. We also have other desktop computers, in the library lab over on the far bottom right corner and places like that. But the hottest seat in the house is this one on the end, where the person who, when they're sitting there, is actually looking out over the whole library, and they have a wall behind them. Yeah. So it's actually probably, it's a space that, as far as what we were thinking, without interviewing these people, asking them why they chose that particular spot, just seeing other trends and where people decided to sit in the library, there seemed to be, a preference for having a lot of personal space and having some element of maybe privacy. People gravitated to the corners of the library. They gravitated to, to the place where I'm up against the wall, not kind of out in the open where everyone walking past me can see what I'm working on, There is also sort of students really liked working at the desk that are by the windows, and they also like working on the window side.
Yes, they
so
do.
Closer toward the windows there as well, which is great. I mean, the library has a great view. Like I said, you can see the strip from the library and the desert as well. It's just a really pretty kind of view. There's a lot of sunshine coming in. It is just a really kind of nice place to sit and work. Kind of the exception to that we found was the desks. Not the desk, the tables that are right at the entrance of the library. This is sort of a hub for socialization in the library. Students often bring food up there from the cafe. They sit, they like to chit chat with their friends. They do work as well. There's a lot of conversation that sort of happens in that area pretty consistently. It's also the place, if a student checks out a board game or something like that, they sit there to play it. Yeah. And that seems to be the one space in the library where people sit next to each other.
Yeah, it's true.
Consistently, because oftentimes it seems like they're there with their friends. So there's a sort of social element. So those were in general sort of the findings that we had in terms of where people like to be in the library.
Yeah, and just, we also discovered where people don't like to be in the library.
True.
So as you can see, there's one area that just has not really anything. Anybody sat there. And so that gives us opportunities to improve that in the future.
Yeah, we know that if we take that furniture out and we do something different there, no one's probably going to be upset about it.
Yeah, definitely not.
Because they don't sit there to begin with.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All right. So the heat map in action. So in addition to having our master heat map, we also did heat maps for, for only one day, granted, because it was a lot, those, individual 30-minute segments so that I could, string them together in a video editor, these various images to just show progression over time. That was helpful for us just so we could see how things, had a visual for how things changed in the library over our busiest day, because that's the day I chose to do for this visualization. It was a Tuesday. But it's also ended up being a great way to show to the rest of the library team, what it looks like in the library. And, the fact that it sort of moves through, the activity and where people are in the library during the day is just a little bit jazzier than your typical graph.
Yes.
And
sure.
I think like it's not in our lessons learned, but one thing that I did take away from this is that if you can make, the more interesting you can make the visualization, the kind of more engaged people kind of are in receiving or paying attention to your data. Yeah. So I'm going to play this for you really quick so you can kind of see a progression of activity in our library over the course of our busiest day for that week. And then you have the two people. No one in there for like the past hour and a half, before it closes. But yeah, I'll play it one more time just so you can kind of get it. So you see like these people, they're pretty spread out. As the library gets busier, those desks, those where it's really sunny, get very popular.
And they're a little bit hidden too.
Yeah. It's a little quieter area in the library as well. All right. Oh, that's not what I meant to do. All right.
Okay. So I will take it. So as Lauren talked about, the corners of the library are very popular. People just tend to gravitate towards the ends of the library. As you can see in this photo on the right-hand side that was taken in our quiet study area, and people are just sitting pretty far away from each other. They're taking the corners, they're not sitting next to anybody. And as you can see the view from, it's pretty much like windows everywhere in that room. And so it's just a beautiful view. Okay, some findings. So we actually noticed that 36% of people who sit in the high chairs and the high tables use up extra space for their belongings. And so I would say this is probably the biggest lesson that we learned, is just simply that the high tables and chairs are just simply too high. And so we're actually working on improving them over the summer. Our plan is to just exchange them. Our plan was to exchange them for lower tables and lower chairs. But after talking with campus infrastructure, we're actually going through some space issues. And so we actually came up with an alternative to just purchase baggage hooks so people can hang their stuff off the tables. And we will be retesting this in the fall to see if it works.
Yeah, and by using extra space for their belongings, most commonly they would take up the chair next to them.
Yes.
Which, limits seating in the library. But who knows, maybe someone wouldn't sit next to them anyway with the way students like to spread out.
Yeah.
Or we would see them, take up, I saw students take up like half of one of those tables, just spreading their own belongings like all over the table. So even if someone wanted to sit, say, even on the other side of them, like they wouldn't be able to do so, or that person would have to move their stuff. So yeah, they would really sort of make an encampment.
It sends a signal. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, and then noise levels as well. We discovered from Gimlet data that we coded that study room 10 was the biggest issue for us. So just to give you some context, study room 10 is all the way in the back of the library, and it's specifically next to the quiet study area and some ASC study rooms. And so we got feedback from them from both sides that it's just a little bit too loud. People think that it's more private back there because they're in the back of the library, but it definitely you could still hear the noise. And so what we did was we added additional signage in different areas. So we have 2 quiet spaces. We added additional signage there. And just to give you some context, we did have sound paneling in there, but it just wasn't as effective as we thought it would be. And so and we actually had signage in there before. We had little table tents that said the same thing, but they definitely are not paid attention to. They are definitely like, by the end of the year, we have to replace them because they're like battered and like, they've taken,
They migrate.
yeah, they
They
migrate a
get
lot
shoved
too.
to like the wall.
Yes, they're,
Yeah.
they're not paid attention to. So we figured these permanent signs would be pretty helpful. And yeah, we actually have noticed a drop in noise complaints. So our busiest time and day, we discovered through this as well. So we noticed that Tuesdays between 10:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. were our busiest times. And so we actually think that this is really helpful information to know. From a services standpoint, I know to always have 2 people during this time frame because I know it's going to be busy if we're like short-staffed or whatever. And then it's also a good opportunity for marketing if they want to do events like therapy animals during this time. We just know that more people will come. And as for lessons learned, we have 4 major ones. So to start off, just communication with the others who are helping you with heat maps is very important. We, did talk to them, talk to everybody about just how to do the heat mapping and everything like that, and the signals and the key. But it's like a game of telephone. Everything gets interpreted differently. And so just having some more practice rounds before getting started with everybody would be very helpful. And so that goes over our second one, is just giving yourself time to test before getting started. We did do it, we just didn't practice with everyone. And we probably could have practiced just a little bit more, just to get out all the kinks. And then be creative with the changes that you are making. So not everything will work out, like I mentioned, with campus infrastructure. So that's why we had the baggage hooks as the backup. And we also are thinking about doing white noise machines in case the signs don't work as effectively as we would like. And so, and then the last one is just limited time for other work during the study. Just be very mindful of that. You will not have very much time to do anything else or concentrate on anything else, because ideally, you're going to take around 15 minutes to, process the heat map, put it in Qualtrics, and then you're going to have 15 minutes to yourself. And then you're going to have to go back out there. And so just make sure that, you block off your calendar during that time and be prepared. And like I mentioned, in the future, we're making changes over the summer right now. We will be retesting everything that we changed in the fall. We're actually thinking about doing it in November again in the same week. And so, we're just excited to see what we have done and implemented and the changes that come out of it, and then just to see the impact.